You're in the middle of a conversation. The person smiles, the words sound friendly, but your stomach instantly twists and you know it is a lie. Do you know that horrible feeling of having to pretend you did not notice the performance just to avoid awkwardness? The great hidden question no one answers is this: why has your mind suddenly started decoding falseness so aggressively, and what does this new ability reveal about the end of the reality we once knew? Something has changed inside you. Conversations that once felt normal now feel heavy and artificial. You notice forced laughter, hidden envy, fake kindness, emotional manipulation, and your body reacts before your mind can explain why. It is as if the illusion no longer holds together the way it used to. The strange part is that you are not trying to analyze people. You simply see through them automatically now. And this can feel isolating at first. You start wondering if you are becoming too sensitive or emotionally distant from the world. But what if this discomfort is not dysfunction? What if your nervous system is finally rejecting the emotional noise humanity learned to normalize? Because once you truly begin seeing clearly, superficiality does not just annoy you anymore. It exhausts you. You sit down to talk with someone you know, and within 10 minutes you feel completely drained, as if your battery had been emptied. What you are feeling is not just emotional intuition, it is pure physics. Everything in the universe emits a frequency. When your electromagnetic field raises its vibration, any social mask rooted in fear or manipulation creates physical friction in the environment. Your central nervous system rejects the lie before your brain can even process the words. And what makes this experience so disturbing is that it happens before logic has time to explain it. The person may be saying all the right things. Their tone sounds calm. Their face looks relaxed. But your body already knows something is off. Your chest tightens slightly. Your stomach contracts. Your energy begins to sink for no visible reason. This is the moment where many people start doubting themselves, because the mind has been trained to trust appearances more than sensation. But the body detects energetic inconsistency long before the conscious mind can translate it into language. Most people spend years ignoring these signals. They override them to avoid conflict. They convince themselves they are overthinking. But lately, something has changed. The illusion is becoming harder to maintain because human perception is becoming more sensitive to energetic distortion. What once passed unnoticed now feels unbearable. Even small amounts of falseness create internal friction. Think about how quickly your mood can change after being around certain people. You walk into a room feeling clear and balanced, then 20 minutes later, you feel mentally foggy, emotionally irritated, or strangely exhausted. That shift is not imaginary. Your nervous system is constantly reading information beyond words. Tiny facial expressions, forced emotional tones, hidden resentment, suppressed envy, emotional manipulation. The body absorbs all of it like an antenna. Science already shows that the human heart generates an electromagnetic field extending beyond the body. The brain and nervous system are continuously processing environmental signals, even subconsciously. But what happens when your internal state becomes more coherent? What happens when you begin operating with less self-deception inside yourself? Your sensitivity increases, and suddenly, environments that once felt normal begin to feel heavy. This is why some conversations now feel physically painful. You are no longer only hearing language, you are detecting contradiction. A person says they support you, but their energy contracts when you speak about your dreams. Someone smiles at you, yet your body senses competition underneath the kindness. Another person acts interested in your life, but something inside you feels emotionally unsafe without understanding why. The strange part is that people rarely realize they are transmitting this tension. Most social masks are unconscious survival mechanisms built over years of fear, rejection, insecurity, or the need for control. Humanity became highly skilled at performance, polite smiles, social scripts, pretending to listen, pretending to care, pretending to be confident, pretending to be fulfilled. Entire relationships were built on maintaining emotional costumes because authenticity felt dangerous. But frequency does not respond to performance, it responds to coherence. And when someone begins reconnecting with their authentic internal state, the nervous system starts rejecting energetic contradiction automatically. This is why your tolerance for superficial interactions suddenly collapses. It is not arrogance, it is not antisocial behavior. Your system is simply becoming incompatible with emotional distortion. The problem is that most people interpret this awakening incorrectly. They think they are becoming too sensitive or emotionally unstable. In reality, they are finally noticing how much energy it takes to remain connected to environments built on hidden tension. The exhaustion comes from constantly translating conflicting signals. Your mind tries to believe the words while your body detects the deeper truth underneath them. This creates an invisible internal battle. And the more your awareness sharpens, the more obvious the illusion becomes. You start noticing how many interactions are driven by fear of judgment, fear of exclusion, fear of appearing weak, fear of losing status. You begin seeing that many conversations are not actually exchanges of truth, but negotiations of image. People managing perceptions, protecting identities, defending emotional masks they no longer even realize they are wearing. That realization can feel isolating at first, because you start wondering if authentic connection even exists anymore. But this is where a dangerous mistake quietly begins to emerge. The moment people start sensing these energetic distortions everywhere, they often react impulsively. Some become angry at the falseness, others withdraw completely from the world, and without realizing it, they create an even bigger drain on their own energy. And this is where the overwhelming majority of people make a silent and extremely dangerous mistake. The moment you notice these masks falling apart, your first instinct is to confront the lie or lock yourself in your room to escape from everyone. But when you react with anger or judgment, you create a critical leak in your own vitality. There is an exact way to shield your field against this theft of energy that I am about to reveal to you. But first, you need to understand what they are really trying to hide from you. Because most of the time, people are not protecting truth. They are protecting identity that changes everything. When someone performs, exaggerates, manipulates, or hides behind emotional masks, it is usually not because they are evil. It is because somewhere deep inside them, they are terrified that without the performance, they will lose love, control, importance, or safety. The human ego survives by maintaining a version of reality that feels emotionally manageable, even if that version is false. This is why the illusion has lasted for so long. Society rewarded appearances more than authenticity. People learned very early that being accepted often mattered more than being real. So they built personalities designed for survival instead of connection. Over time, the mask became so normal that many forgot it was even there. But the moment your perception sharpens, you begin noticing the strain behind the performance. You can hear forced enthusiasm. You can feel hidden resentment underneath polite words. You can sense when someone is trying to dominate a conversation because they are deeply insecure inside. And at first, this realization can make you angry because part of you feels betrayed. You start thinking, why is everyone pretending? But this is exactly where your energy begins collapsing. The moment you emotionally react to every false vibration around you, you become entangled with it. Anger chains your nervous system to the very frequency you are trying to escape. Judgment keeps your attention locked onto the distortion. Even isolation can become another form of attachment, because you are still organizing your life around the emotional weight of other people's unconscious behavior. And this drains you more than the mask itself. Have you noticed how exhausting it feels after mentally replaying someone's fake behavior for hours? Your body leaves the interaction, but your energy does not. Part of your mind remains trapped inside the scene, analyzing every word, every facial expression, every hidden intention. This is how emotional leakage happens, not because someone stole your energy in a mystical way, but because your attention became fused with the emotional charge of the interaction. Attention is energy. Where your focus stays, your nervous system stays. This is why two people can experience the exact same manipulative environment and leave with completely different levels of exhaustion. One person absorbs everything emotionally. The other observes it without internalizing it. The external situation may be identical, but the energetic outcome becomes completely different. The dangerous part is that many spiritually aware people unknowingly feed the very illusion they claim to see through. They become obsessed with identifying narcissists, fake people, toxic energies, hidden agendas. Their awareness sharpens, but their peace disappears. They mistake hypervigilance for wisdom, but constant emotional scanning keeps the body locked in survival mode, and survival mode slowly destroys clarity. Your nervous system was not designed to live in permanent defense against human behavior. The more you search for deception everywhere, the more your body starts expecting danger in every interaction. Eventually, you stop seeing people clearly altogether because fear begins filtering your perception. This is why discernment and paranoia are not the same thing. Real discernment feels calm. It does not need to prove anything. It does not obsess. It notices inconsistency without becoming consumed by it. The strongest energetic protection is not emotional armor. It is inner stability. When you stop needing people to be different in order for you to remain balanced, something profound begins to happen. Their performance loses access to your internal world. And strangely, this is when masks often begin collapsing on their own. Not because you attacked them, not because you exposed them, but because unconscious behavior depends on emotional participation to survive. Most social performances require silent agreement from the people around them. They need reactions, validation, emotional engagement. The moment you stop feeding the dynamic internally, the structure weakens. This is why calm presence can feel so uncomfortable to people hiding behind false identities. Your neutrality becomes a mirror they cannot easily control, and many will unconsciously try to provoke you emotionally just to pull you back into the old game. Once you begin seeing this mechanism clearly, another realization starts becoming impossible to ignore. The masks are not only appearing in personal relationships, they are everywhere, in media, in institutions, in public narratives, in entire systems built on collective emotional conditioning. And suddenly the world itself begins feeling strangely artificial, as if the surface of reality is starting to crack open right in front of you. The anguish begins to intensify because you realize the falseness is not only in your friends. You turn on the TV, look at institutions and governments, and suddenly everything feels like a badly built cardboard set. Our 3D reality functioned like a dense matrix sustained by consensus and collective acceptance. As the Earth's resonance accelerates, this code begins to fail, and the hologram loses its cohesive force. You are literally watching the scenery collapse with your own eyes. What once looked solid now feels strangely fragile. You notice it in the way people repeat narratives without conviction. You see it in forced public optimism that no longer sounds believable. Entire systems continue functioning outwardly, but underneath them there is a growing sensation of instability, like a building vibrating before the cracks become visible. And the unsettling part is that you cannot unsee it anymore. For years, most people moved through life assuming the structures around them were permanent. Careers, status, institutions, social identities. The collective mind agreed to treat these things as unquestionably real, and that agreement gave the system its power. Human reality has always depended heavily on shared perception. When enough people believe in the same story, the story begins shaping emotional and physical behavior on a massive scale. Money only works because people agree it has value. Authority only works because people agree to obey it. Social status only works because people agree to measure worth through appearance. The collective hologram survives through emotional participation. But something unusual happens when consciousness begins shifting. The emotional agreement weakens. People start feeling the gap between appearance and truth. They sense contradiction everywhere, even if they cannot fully explain it yet. This creates psychological tension because the mind wants stability, but the nervous system detects that the old structure no longer feels coherent. That is why so many people today feel emotionally disoriented without understanding why. On the surface, life continues normally. People go to work. They scroll through their phones, they follow routines. But underneath all of it, there is growing energetic fatigue. The human system is becoming overwhelmed by the amount of distortion required to maintain the illusion. And when distortion reaches critical levels, reality begins producing visible glitches. You can already see this happening socially. Conversations feel more polarized. Emotional reactions become extreme. Small disagreements explode into hostility. People cling harder to identities because internally they feel the ground shifting beneath them. The collapse of false structures does not initially create peace, it creates exposure. Everything hidden rises toward the surface at once. Fear, manipulation, control, emotional dependency, performative morality. The collective nervous system is under pressure because masks that once blended smoothly into society are becoming easier to detect. And when human beings feel emotionally exposed, they either awaken or tighten their grip on illusion even more aggressively. This is why the world currently feels so contradictory. You are watching two realities coexist at the same time. One part of humanity is desperately trying to preserve old psychological structures. Another part is beginning to see through them entirely. And the tension between those two states creates the sensation that reality itself is unstable. In many ways, it is. Not because the physical world is disappearing, but because perception is changing faster than the systems built to control it. The mind struggles with this realization because it was conditioned to trust external structures more than inner perception. So when your intuition begins detecting incoherence in media, politics, corporations, or social movements, you may initially think you are becoming cynical. But this goes deeper than pessimism. It is pattern recognition. You begin noticing how often fear is used to guide behavior, how outrage is amplified because emotional people are easier to influence, how distraction keeps people disconnected from themselves, how constant stimulation weakens reflection. And once you see the mechanism clearly, the illusion starts feeling painfully obvious. It becomes difficult to participate in conversations that revolve entirely around image management, social performance, or collective emotional programming. At first, this awareness can make you feel isolated, almost alien inside your own environment. You may even wonder if you are becoming emotionally detached from humanity itself. But what is actually happening is that your consciousness is separating from unconscious participation. You are no longer automatically absorbing collective narratives without questioning them internally. That shift changes your entire energetic presence, because the moment someone stops unconsciously feeding the system, they begin affecting the environment around them differently. People sense it immediately, even if they cannot explain why. Some become curious around you, others become uncomfortable, and certain individuals react with strange hostility for no visible reason at all. Not because you attacked them, not because you said anything wrong, but because authenticity destabilizes environments built on performance. And this is where the pressure starts becoming intensely personal. The clearer your internal signal becomes, the harder it is for people still attached to masks to remain comfortable in your presence. Without trying, without forcing, simply by existing differently, you begin triggering emotional reactions that reveal far more than words ever could. And the pressure reaches a critical level. Have you noticed how certain people suddenly become strangely uncomfortable, passive-aggressive, or try to diminish you the moment you walk into a room? Your authentic presence, free of masks, demands authenticity. In quantum mechanics, your higher energy dominates the environment and terrifies the ego of those still trying to survive through pretending. Without you saying a single word, your pure vibration threatens their hiding place. What confuses many people is that this reaction often appears before any real interaction even happens. You have not argued with anyone. You have not attacked them. Sometimes you have barely spoken at all. Yet there is tension. A strange emotional resistance fills the space. Someone interrupts you unnecessarily. Another person subtly mocks you. Someone else suddenly becomes cold for no visible reason, and you feel it immediately. Not because you are paranoid, but because energy always communicates before language does. The human nervous system constantly measures safety, hierarchy, emotional congruence, and hidden intention. Most of this process happens unconsciously. When someone is deeply attached to a social mask, they depend on predictable emotional dynamics to maintain their identity. They expect people to play certain roles, stay quiet, seek approval, compete carefully, pretend politely, follow the invisible script. But authenticity disrupts the script. A person who is internally aligned without needing constant validation creates instability inside those still operating through emotional performance. Your presence becomes a mirror they did not ask to look into. and mirrors are uncomfortable when someone is trying to avoid themselves. This is why people sometimes react more strongly to calm authenticity than to open aggression. Aggression can be understood. It fits inside the old emotional system, but grounded presence exposes the illusion silently. It forces hidden insecurity to become visible without anyone saying a word. The ego senses this exposure and interprets it as danger. That is why some people feel compelled to pull your energy down, not consciously in most cases, but unconsciously they may interrupt your excitement, question your confidence, minimize your intuition, or project negative assumptions onto you. They are not necessarily attacking you as a person. They are reacting to the discomfort created when your energy reminds them of the gap between who they truly are and who they pretend to be. And the stronger your inner clarity becomes, the more visible this pattern gets. You begin noticing how often people perform certainty while secretly feeling lost. How many social interactions revolve around control rather than connection. How frequently confidence is actually fear wearing expensive clothing. The illusion becomes difficult to ignore because your nervous system no longer responds to surface presentation alone. At first, this realization can hurt deeply, especially if the reactions come from people you love. Friends may become distant after you begin changing internally. Family members may subtly criticize your growth. Co-workers may project strange hostility toward your calmness or independence. And because you are emotionally aware, you may initially blame yourself for the tension. You wonder if you are becoming arrogant, too intense, too different. But often what people react to is not superiority. It is contrast. Your authenticity highlights the emotional exhaustion of pretending. And many people would rather attack the mirror than face what the mirror reveals. This does not mean you are better than anyone else. That belief would simply create another ego trap. Every human being carries wounds, conditioning, and unconscious patterns. The difference is that some people are beginning to face them honestly, while others still rely on performance to avoid inner discomfort. That difference changes energetic compatibility dramatically. You may notice that crowded environments now exhaust you faster than before. Conversations built entirely around gossip, image, or emotional games begin feeling physically heavy. Your body tightens around forced interactions because your system no longer wants to participate in unconscious exchanges. And this sensitivity increases as inner coherence grows. The strange part is that your presence alone can begin shifting environments without effort. Some people suddenly confess personal truths around you. Others become emotionally defensive. Some disappear from your life quietly because maintaining the mask around you becomes too difficult. It is not magic, it is resonance. False structures require energetic maintenance. When someone stops unconsciously validating those structures, instability appears. This is also why highly authentic people often trigger projection. Others may accuse them of being cold, intimidating, selfish, or detached simply because they no longer feed emotional performances in the expected way. The ego prefers familiar discomfort over unfamiliar honesty. So when the illusion starts breaking apart, many people instinctively resist the person reflecting that change. And if you do not understand this process, you can accidentally shrink yourself just to make others comfortable again. You may dim your voice, hide your intuition, pretend not to notice what you clearly feel, laugh at things that drain you, stay inside environments that suffocate your nervous system, all to avoid triggering discomfort in others. But suppressing your awareness comes with a biological cost. The body keeps score of every moment you betray your internal truth to maintain external harmony. Over time, the nervous system begins signaling that the gap between your authentic energy and your daily environment is becoming unsustainable. But now reality turns upside down and everything you thought you knew collapses. You probably believe you started seeing these masks because you became an expert at reading people, right? Wrong. The shocking truth is that this new vision of yours has absolutely nothing to do with them. You can only see other people's illusions so clearly now because you finally stepped outside of your own. Their masks are merely environmental markers confirming your personal liberation. This is the part almost nobody wants to hear. Your clarity was never born from superiority. It was born from honesty. The reason you suddenly recognize emotional manipulation, forced behavior, hidden insecurity, or fake confidence so quickly is because somewhere along the way you became exhausted with pretending inside yourself. Maybe life cornered you into it. Maybe suffering stripped away your old identity. Maybe disappointment forced you to question who you really were beneath all the roles you learned to perform. But something cracked open, and once that happened, your perception changed permanently. Because the human mind can only recognize clearly in others what it has already confronted internally. Before awakening to your own patterns, you probably tolerated things that now feel unbearable. You ignored emotional tension. You accepted shallow connections. You adapted yourself to environments that slowly drained your spirit, because deep down, you were still trying to maintain certain illusions too. The illusion of being accepted. The illusion of control. The illusion that external validation could create inner peace. The illusion that fitting in was safer than being authentic. But eventually, those structures started collapsing inside you first. That is why the external world now looks different. Not because humanity suddenly became fake overnight, but because your nervous system stopped normalizing distortion. And this realization is deeply humbling when you truly understand it. Because it removes the temptation to turn your awareness into ego. Many people fall into that trap after spiritual awakening. They begin seeing through social masks and unconsciously start identifying themselves as more evolved than others. They judge people harshly for being unconscious, while forgetting they once operated from the exact same conditioning. But that mindset creates another layer of illusion, just dressed in spiritual language. The ego is extremely adaptable. It can even transform awakening into vanity. That is why true awareness softens you instead of hardening you. When you genuinely recognize how much of your own life was once guided by fear, performance, emotional survival, and unconscious behavior, compassion naturally appears. Not weak compassion that tolerates abuse or ignores manipulation, but clear compassion, the kind that sees human beings honestly without needing to hate them for their confusion. Because most people are not consciously malicious. They are disconnected from themselves. There is a difference. The person who constantly seeks attention may actually be starving for worth internally. The person who manipulates may be terrified of abandonment. The person who performs confidence may secretly feel invisible without validation. Once you understand this, you stop taking every interaction personally. You begin seeing masks less as weapons and more as emotional armor, and this changes your energy completely. Instead of entering every social interaction searching for deception, you start observing people with calm awareness. You no longer need to expose every false behavior because your peace is not dependent on controlling what others choose to project. That shift alone protects enormous amounts of energy. It also reveals something uncomfortable about human identity itself. Most people do not actually know who they are without social conditioning. From childhood, humanity is trained into roles: successful, attractive, strong, intelligent, agreeable, dominant, useful. People spend decades building personalities around survival and approval, often without ever asking whether those identities reflect their authentic nature. So when the illusion begins collapsing, confusion naturally follows. If the mask falls away, who remains underneath? That question terrifies the ego, because the ego survives through attachment to image. And this is why many people resist authenticity even when they desperately crave it. Authenticity requires uncertainty, vulnerability, emotional exposure. It asks a person to release control over how they are perceived. Very few people are prepared for that immediately. And if you are beginning to see through the social theater more clearly now, it is likely because you have already started walking through that uncomfortable process yourself. Maybe quietly, maybe imperfectly, but enough to change your frequency. You no longer fully believe in the old performances. That is why your body reacts so strongly to environments built entirely on image management. Your nervous system recognizes the emotional cost of maintaining false identities because it remembers how exhausting that life felt inside you too. And this awareness creates another major shift that many people overlook. The clearer you become internally, the harder it becomes to force yourself into spaces that contradict your authentic energy. At first, this feels emotional, but over time, The conflict stops being only psychological and begins expressing itself physically through the body itself. And that is why trying to continue living in the old world with this new clarity will create a short circuit in your biological system. If you force your energy to fit into places where people choose to perform through lies, your physical body will begin to scream. Chronic headaches, sudden anxiety, and extreme exhaustion are signs that your organism is begging you to stop squeezing yourself into spaces that can no longer support the size of your consciousness. At first, you may think something is wrong with you. You sleep but still wake up tired. You spend time around certain people and suddenly feel emotionally heavy for the rest of the day. Loud environments that once felt normal now overwhelm your nervous system. Conversations that revolve around gossip, image, or emotional games leave you mentally foggy, almost as if your body is struggling to digest the interaction itself. And the confusing part is that medical tests often show nothing alarming, because what you are experiencing is not always disease in the traditional sense. Sometimes it is overload. Your system is carrying the tension of living between two realities at once. One part of you has already seen through the illusion. Another part is still trying to survive inside structures built around it. That internal conflict consumes enormous energy. The human body is deeply intelligent. It constantly monitors emotional safety, environmental coherence, and psychological stress. When you repeatedly force yourself into situations that violate your inner truth, your nervous system enters a state of chronic tension. The body begins preparing for danger, even when no visible threat exists. This is why people in awakening phases often experience symptoms that seem disconnected from external events. Tightness in the chest, sudden fatigue, brain fog, restlessness, difficulty concentrating, emotional numbness, followed by emotional overload. The organism is trying to process a growing mismatch between your authentic perception and the reality you continue pretending to tolerate. Your body knows when your spirit is exhausted before your mind admits it. And for many people, the hardest part is realizing how much energy they spent maintaining false alignment, smiling when they wanted silence, agreeing when something felt deeply wrong, staying inside relationships, jobs, social circles, or routines that slowly drained life from them because leaving felt too uncomfortable or uncertain. The body absorbs all of it, every suppressed emotion, every forced interaction, every moment you betray your internal signal to preserve external harmony. At some point, the nervous system stops cooperating quietly. This is why awakening often feels less like becoming more spiritual and more like becoming unable to tolerate emotional dishonesty anymore. Your threshold changes. The performances that once seemed manageable now create immediate biological resistance. It becomes harder to fake enthusiasm, harder to ignore manipulation, harder to remain present in environments filled with unconscious tension. And this transition can feel incredibly lonely, because the world around you may continue acting as if nothing unusual is happening. People normalize stress, normalize emotional suppression, normalize exhaustion. Entire cultures celebrate overwork, distraction, and emotional disconnection as if they were signs of success. But your organism no longer agrees with that rhythm. The illusion starts breaking down physically inside you. You begin craving silence more than stimulation, depth more than entertainment, real connection more than social performance. Your body starts pulling you away from noise because noise now feels invasive instead of comforting. And this can create guilt. You may worry that you are becoming distant or antisocial. You may feel pressure to continue participating in dynamics that your nervous system clearly rejects. Many people ignore these signals because they fear disappointing others or disrupting the identity they built for years. But ignoring the body during this phase only intensifies the overload. The nervous system cannot endlessly separate what you feel from how you live. Eventually, the gap becomes too large. That is why some people suddenly change their entire lifestyle after periods of emotional collapse. They leave draining environments, end relationships, reduce social exposure, change routines. Not because they are weak, but because their biology can no longer sustain prolonged incoherence. The body forces honesty when the mind resists it for too long. And despite how uncomfortable this process feels, there is intelligence inside it. Your organism is not punishing you, it is recalibrating you. It is attempting to bring your external reality into alignment with your internal awareness. The exhaustion is often not caused by awakening itself, but by resisting the changes awakening requires. Still, there is another important danger here. Some people become so overwhelmed by collective distortion that they start identifying with the suffering completely. They absorb every emotional current around them, every lie, every manipulation, every conflict. They carry the emotional weight of the world inside their nervous system until their clarity turns into chronic exhaustion. But there is a crucial shift that changes everything once you understand it. You were never meant to absorb the illusion emotionally in order to see through it. Observation alone already changes reality. And the moment you learn how to observe without collapsing into reaction, an entirely different level of energy becomes available to you. Remember that dangerous mistake of absorbing the emotional charge through reaction that I mentioned earlier. The ultimate way out is not escaping to the mountains, but using physics in your favor and mastering the neutral observer effect. In quantum science, simple observation collapses reality. The next time a mask appears in front of you, do not feel anger, do not try to rip it off, and do not feed the drama. The moment you remove your emotion from the scene and simply observe, the other person's illusion instantly loses the power to steal your peace. This changes everything once you truly experience it. Because most people believe protection comes from defense. They think they must argue, expose, avoid, or emotionally shield themselves against every false vibration around them. But constant defense still keeps your nervous system emotionally connected to the thing disturbing you. The body remains tense, the mind remains attached. Your energy continues revolving around the conflict. Neutral observation breaks that connection. It allows you to see clearly without becoming consumed by what you see. Think about how different it feels when someone tries to provoke you and you no longer emotionally bite the hook. The dynamic changes immediately. Their words may still exist, but the emotional grip weakens. Why? Because unconscious behavior feeds on reaction. Emotional drama requires participation to survive. Most social manipulation operates through emotional triggering. A person criticizes you hoping to pull you into self-defense. Someone projects negativity, hoping you absorb their internal chaos. Another person exaggerates emotions, hoping to control the atmosphere around them. In many cases, these behaviors are unconscious, but the mechanism remains the same. If they can pull your nervous system into reactivity, your clarity decreases instantly, and reactive people are easier to influence. That is why neutrality is not weakness. It is energetic independence. The observer state allows you to remain present without surrendering your inner balance to external behavior. You notice the tension. You recognize the manipulation. You see the illusion clearly. But instead of emotionally collapsing into the scene, you stay internally steady. This is much harder than it sounds, because the ego loves emotional participation. It wants to correct people, expose contradictions, defend identity, prove awareness. But every time you become emotionally entangled in unconscious dynamics, your perception narrows. Reaction clouds observation. Calmness sharpens it. This is why some of the most powerful people you will ever meet are not the loudest people in the room. They are the ones who can remain internally grounded while chaos unfolds around them. Their nervous system does not immediately synchronize with external instability, and that stability changes the entire energetic field. You may have already experienced moments like this without fully understanding them. Someone enters a conversation trying to provoke tension, but because you remain emotionally neutral, the interaction slowly loses momentum. The manipulation cannot fully land. The emotional performance begins collapsing under its own weight because there is no energetic fuel feeding it anymore. Observation exposes distortion naturally, without force, without aggression, without needing to dominate anyone. This is one of the deepest misunderstandings people have about awakening. They think seeing through the illusion means constantly confronting it, but endless confrontation often strengthens the very dynamic you are trying to escape. The ego loves opposition because opposition keeps attention locked inside the game. True freedom begins when your peace no longer depends on controlling what others choose to project. That does not mean becoming passive or allowing abuse. Boundaries still matter deeply. Discernment still matters. Walking away from harmful environments still matters. But those actions come from clarity, not emotional combustion. There is a massive energetic difference between calmly leaving a distorted environment and leaving while carrying rage, resentment, and obsession inside your body for weeks afterward. One preserves your energy. The other continues draining it long after the interaction ends. And this observer state does something else that becomes incredibly important as your awareness expands. It prevents you from becoming psychologically trapped by collective fear. The modern world constantly pulls attention toward outrage, panic, conflict, and emotional overstimulation. Entire systems compete for human focus because attention is power. But when you learn to observe without immediate emotional absorption, your mind becomes harder to program. You start seeing emotional manipulation in real time. You notice how fear spreads socially, how outrage becomes contagious, how people unconsciously mirror the emotional state of the environments around them. And instead of automatically absorbing those frequencies, you begin choosing consciously what deserves access to your nervous system. That is real energetic protection, not isolation, not paranoia, not building emotional walls against humanity, but developing the ability to remain internally coherent while reality moves through waves of distortion around you. And the more stable this inner observation becomes, the more something extraordinary starts happening naturally. False structures begin revealing themselves faster in your presence, not because you attack them, but because unconscious patterns struggle to survive when they are no longer emotionally fed. Over time, this creates a profound shift in how you experience the entire world. You stop feeling like a victim, trapped inside a collapsing reality, and begin understanding that your awareness itself is changing the field around you. By maintaining this neutral state, you stop being a victim of a superficial world and become the very anchor of truth within it. Your sharpened perception forces what is false to melt away simply because of vibrational incompatibility. What you feel when you look into someone's eyes and see the lie exposed is the biological and real-time proof that the veil of the planet has fallen, and the old fear-based structures no longer have anywhere left to stand. And for the first time, you begin understanding that your sensitivity was never a weakness. It was awareness trying to wake you up. For years, many people believed strength meant becoming emotionally numb. Ignore intuition, push through exhaustion, stay silent around dishonesty, adapt to environments that slowly poison the nervous system. But now something entirely different is happening. Human beings are starting to recognize that clarity itself carries power, not power through control, not power through dominance, but power through coherence. A person who is internally aligned becomes difficult to manipulate because manipulation depends on emotional confusion. The illusion only survives when people disconnect from their own perception. The moment someone trusts what they genuinely feel instead of blindly obeying appearances, the old structure begins weakening immediately. And this is happening collectively now. You can feel it everywhere. People questioning systems they once trusted automatically. Relationships dissolving because the emotional performance can no longer be maintained. Entire industries built on distraction beginning to feel empty. More individuals craving silence, authenticity, depth, and truth instead of constant stimulation. The world is not simply becoming chaotic, it is becoming exposed. And exposure feels uncomfortable before it feels liberating. That is why so many people currently feel emotionally raw. The masks are thinning globally, hidden motives reveal themselves faster, false confidence collapses more easily, performative behavior becomes harder to sustain for long periods because human nervous systems are becoming more sensitive to incoherence. The old emotional scripts are failing. You can see this in everyday life now. People smile while their eyes look exhausted. Public figures speak confidently while radiating tension underneath. Entire conversations feel rehearsed instead of alive. The gap between appearance and reality is becoming easier to detect because collective awareness is no longer fully asleep. And once you recognize this, something important changes inside you. You stop chasing validation from structures that are already collapsing. This is one of the biggest shifts of all, because many people still unconsciously seek approval from systems built on the very illusion they claim to escape. They want authenticity, but still fear social rejection. They want peace, but still organize their lives around external expectations. They sense the distortion, but continue betraying their own nervous system just to remain accepted inside environments that no longer resonate with them. But eventually, the inner cost becomes too high. And when that moment comes, a quieter kind of strength begins emerging. You stop needing everyone to understand you. You stop exhausting yourself trying to explain your perception to people committed to misunderstanding it. You stop forcing connection where energetic alignment no longer exists. Instead, you become more intentional with your attention, your presence, your energy. And this changes the atmosphere around you more than you realize, because coherence is contagious too. A calm nervous system influences other nervous systems. A grounded presence stabilizes environments unconsciously. Authenticity gives silent permission for others to lower their own masks. Not everyone will respond positively to this, of course. Some people will resist harder than ever because the collapse of illusion feels threatening to identities built entirely around performance. But others will feel relief around you. Relief that they no longer have to pretend so much. Relief that someone can remain real without needing to dominate, impress, or manipulate. And this is how transformation actually spreads. Not through forcing beliefs onto people, but through embodied coherence, through presence, through emotional honesty, through the quiet refusal to participate in unconscious games that drain human energy. The deeper truth is that reality has always responded to collective perception. Entire civilizations are shaped by what human beings repeatedly agree to normalize. Fear can spread collectively. So can deception. But awareness can spread too. And once enough individuals stop emotionally feeding distortion, the structure weakens naturally. That is the real collapse happening underneath the surface of modern life. Not the destruction of the world, the destruction of unconscious participation. This is why your ability to see through people now feels so intense. It is not random sensitivity. It is evidence that your perception is no longer fully synchronized with the old emotional matrix. Your nervous system has started prioritizing truth over performance, coherence over appearance, authenticity over social programming. And even though this transition can feel lonely at times, it also places you in a completely different relationship with reality itself. You are no longer trapped inside the theater emotionally. You are watching it consciously. And once a person truly sees the illusion clearly without fear, without hatred, and without needing to escape from humanity, something irreversible happens inside them. The performance may continue around them, but internally, they are already free. Having this almost frightening ability to see through people was never an antisocial curse. It is your cosmic and physical confirmation that you no longer obey the rules of a three-dimensional simulation. The matrix has lost you forever. The next time you interact with an empty smile, take a deep breath, smile back internally, and be grateful that you can see clearly. Their theater may continue, but you no longer need to perform. This is the new horizon without illusion. Not a life where the world suddenly becomes perfect, but a life where your peace is no longer controlled by appearances. You stop abandoning yourself to fit into environments that drain your spirit. You stop confusing noise with truth, and little by little your energy returns to you. The greatest shift is not that you can now see through masks, it is that you no longer need one of your own. If this message reached something deep inside you, write this in the comments. I choose truth over performance. That will let me know you stayed until the end, and that this message found you at the right moment. And if this kind of content speaks to you, watch one of the videos appearing on your screen right now. If you want to support the channel even more, consider becoming a member. Exclusive content will be coming very soon.